In a world obsessed with visibility, what happens to those who choose silence? The ones who don't go live, who don't announce their every move, who build with the curtains closed, while everyone else is shouting into the void. There's a strange kind of power in that silence. A calm, focused energy that doesn't need validation because it's too busy creating. But let's not romanticize it too quickly. Silence is not easy. Behind the quiet is the war of self-doubt. Days when nothing seems to move, nights when you wonder if anyone will ever care about the thing you're giving your soul to. It's the startup founder coding in a dim kitchen, months into savings, eating instant noodles and tweaking one line of logic. It's the writer, redrafting a single chapter, for the 11th time. While the world forgets they even exist, it's the YouTube creator making faceless videos, uploading every week for 2 years with 0 likes, just because. They feel something calling them. No applause, no likes, no comments, just the work. And that's where real success is born. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Because silence isn't the absence of progress. It's the environment where deep growth happens. And the ones who understand that, they don't fear being unseen. They fear becoming someone who never gave themselves the chance to finish. Everyone wants the final scene, the standing ovation, the funding round, the millions of subscribers. But no one shows the part where nothing makes sense, where the product doesn't work, where the vision board becomes a source of anxiety instead of motivation, where you start questioning if the path you re on is even real, or just a fantasy you re too stubborn to let go of. This is the desert of progress. The season where growth is invisible, and patience feels like punishment. And yet, this is where silent success is forged. Because when you're building in isolation, the feedback loop is internal. You're not reacting to applause or criticism, you're training your instincts. You become your own editor, your own coach, your own strategist. And in doing so, you develop something most people never do. Creative durability. It's easy to be consistent when people are watching. It's hard to be consistent when no one even knows you exist. But here's the twist. Those who survive this phase win big later, not just in numbers or money, but in depth, clarity, and purpose. They didn't chase trends. They built systems. They didn't build for hype. They built for longevity. Think about it. Every viral creator had a quiet season. Every overnight success had 1,000 quiet nights before it. But we rarely talk about those, because silence isn't sexy. Yet ironically, it's the most powerful force behind the kind of success that doesn't burn out. Let's get brutally honest. Building in silence will test everything you think you know about yourself. Not because you're lazy, not because you're lost, but because when no one is validating your progress, every small win feels like nothing, and every small failure feels like the end. And yet, this is exactly the moment most people quit. They don't quit because they re-weak. They quit because they don't understand the timeline of mastery. The world moves fast. Virality rewards the loud and the lucky. But silent builders, they operate on deep time. One video, one code line, one prototype, one journal entry, stacked slowly and quietly over hundreds of days. It's not glamorous, but it's compound interest in human form. You don't see the change at first. Then suddenly, everything changes. Because every rep in silence strengthens the invisible muscles that the noisy world neglects. Discipline, clarity, depth. Let's be clear. This isn't about being antisocial. It's about being intentional. Isolation isn't exile. It's incubation. You're not avoiding the world. You're preparing to meet it on your own terms. Think of a seed underground. It doesn't complain. It doesn't perform. It doesn't post on social media. But deep beneath the soil, away from attention, it's preparing for something irreversible. That's what silent success feels like. You're not seen, but you're not stagnant. You're absorbing knowledge, refining your skills, building emotional muscle, all while the world assumes nothing is happening. And when the time comes to sprout, it doesn't happen with noise. It happens with readiness. People call it overnight success, but they didn't see the 1,000 days you showed up anyway. The 5 a.m. mornings when no one was watching, the months of confusion, doubt, and redesign. All happening in private. Let others chase applause. You're chasing alignment. The most powerful shifts in your life will never come from crowds. They come from clarity. And clarity often whispers in silence, not in noise. Have you ever noticed how the loudest voices often aren't the wisest? In a room full of noise, the quiet one observing everything is usually the one who's 10 steps ahead. But the world doesn't reward patience right away. Today's culture says, show it all, prove it now, share every step. But the real masters, they build in delay. They don't need to go viral, they need to go deep. And silence gives you that depth. It protects your ideas from premature judgment. It shields your momentum from ego. Because when you grow too publicly, feedback starts shaping your identity instead of your vision. You begin creating for applause, not alignment. And that's the beginning of a slow death for any long-term journey. Silent success isn't just about not telling others what you're redoing. It's about protecting the why behind what you're rebuilding. You're not hiding. You're honoring the process. The ones who can delay the need for validation are the ones who end up with results no one can deny. Let's talk about the trap of early praise. Strangely, a little applause too soon can kill the discipline required for greatness. You post a small win online, likes fire emojis, proud of you bro, comments flood in. Feels good, right? But here's the problem. Your brain thinks the job is done. Dopamine delivered. Mission accomplished. Except, the real mission just started. This is the hidden danger of building publicly. You re-celebrated for 10% effort like it's the final product. And then, the hard 90%, the late nights, revisions, internal doubts. That part gets no claps. So what happens? You slow down. Or worse, you stop. But when you build in silence, there are no premature congratulations, no false finish lines, just pure grind. You keep showing up, improving the work, not the image. There's no pressure to impress, only pressure to improve. And the irony, those who delay recognition often end up with work that speaks so loudly, they don't need to say a word. Because when success finally shows up after years of silence, it doesn't knock, Let's talk about boredom, the silent killer of momentum. In the early days of your silent journey, everything feels exciting. New routines, new goals. You feel unstoppable. But then, the dullness creeps in. You wake up one morning, and the work just feels ... repetitive. No one's watching, no one's clapping. You're doing the same thing you did yesterday, and the day before that. This is where most people quit. Not because it's hard, but because it's boring. We live in a dopamine-addicted culture. Every scroll rewards you, every click gives you a hit, every post, a reaction. But real creation, it rewards slowly, quietly, sometimes painfully, and the only way through is discipline. Boredom isn't a sign you're doing the wrong thing. It's a sign you're redoing the right thing, long enough for it to become real work. Remember, legends aren't made in bursts of inspiration, they're made in seasons of repetition. It's not the guy who writes one great sentence that finishes a book. It's us, the one who shows up to write on the days he doesn't feel like it. If you can keep building through boredom, you'll be ready for brilliance when it shows up. There's a strange kind of paranoia that creeps in during long periods of isolation. What if I'm wasting my time? You start doubting the process. You wonder if anyone will ever see your work. You question if the world even needs what you're building. This is where most give up, not because they failed, but because they convinced themselves they would. But here's something wild. Most of the world's biggest breakthroughs didn't come from people who were sure. They came from people who weren't sure, but kept going anyway. They understood that clarity doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Think of someone building a bridge across a foggy canyon. You won't know how far the other side is until you start laying bricks. In this fog, self-doubt is normal. But abandoning the build guarantees you never arrive. And what if? The next brick was the one that changed everything. This is why patience isn't passive. It's strategic. Patience in silence. Discipline in uncertainty. Consistency in the absence of applause. That's not weakness. That's training. You don't rise when you finally get attention. You rise because you endured long before anyone noticed. Let's talk about one of the most underrated advantages of isolation, freedom from noise. In a connected world, noise isn't just literal sound. It's opinions, trends, critics, metrics, likes, shares, follows, comments. When you're constantly plugged in, you're constantly being measured. And when you're constantly being measured, you're constantly performing. Isolation breaks that cycle. It gives you back the creative playground, the freedom to explore without an audience watching, the space to fail without it being labeled a failure. Do you know why many geniuses go quiet before breakthroughs? Because silence removes the pressure to impress and replaces it with the freedom to experiment. There's no what will people think. No, how will this be received? There's only the work and your wildest ideas. It's where strange prototypes are born, where awkward first versions live, where unpopular truths start to take shape. Before the world even knows what to call them, and by the time the world sees it, it looks polished, sharp, effortless. But they didn't see the version with 10 failed attempts. The nights where you almost deleted the whole thing. The early sketches, the deleted code, the half-written book. That's the hidden beauty of building in isolation. You're free to suck. You're free to rebuild. You're free to take a left turn without justifying it, because no one is watching yet. Now let's address the elephant in the room. But what if I get left behind? That fear of missing out, of being forgotten, of becoming irrelevant, is what pulls most people out of isolation too early. They think, if I don't post every day, they'll forget me. If I'm not showing progress, they'll think I'm stuck. If I'm not visible, I'm invisible. But here's the truth that most algorithms won't tell you. The world doesn't remember noise, it remembers impact. And impact doesn't need to be constant, it needs to be real. Think of authors who release one book every 5 years. Or artists who go silent for a decade, only to come back with something timeless. Or inventors who spend 10 years on a prototype that changes an entire industry. Do they get forgotten during the silence? Sometimes. Do they get remembered after the breakthrough? Always. In a culture of always on, there's power in turning off and going deep. It's not laziness, it's not falling behind, it's strategic invisibility. Because while others are sprinting on the surface, you're drilling toward gold. You don't need to be trending to be transforming, and honestly, most people who trend fast disappear just as fast. Isolation teaches you patience. It teaches you not just how to create, but how to endure. Because staying power isn't built through constant exposure. It's built through clarity, depth, and self-trust, all of which grow best in silence. Let's talk about something almost no one teaches you: how to protect your energy when no one is clapping. In the early stages of silent success, you'll face a psychological fog. Not depression, not burnout, something more subtle. A quiet whisper in your mind that says, is this even worth it? Why am I doing this if no one notices? Maybe I should give up and just be normal. That whisper is your old identity fighting to survive. Because every time you go deeper into your work, your old self starts dying. The one that needed attention, applause, validation. But transformation requires shedding old skin, and that process is uncomfortable. Here's what you need to remember. You're not being ignored, you're being refined. Think of a sword. It's not born sharp. It's forged in heat and silence. Nobody claps for the blacksmith while he's hammering metal in a dark corner. But when the sword is drawn, everyone pays attention. Your isolation is your forge. This is when your mind gets stronger. This is when your ideas get clearer. This is when you become who you're meant to be. And here's the funny part. Once your work does reach the world, people will say, wow, where did this come from? How did you do this overnight? They won't see the nights you spent questioning yourself. They won't know about the doubts, the drafts, the deleted files, the failed versions. All they'll see is the final result. All they'll feel is, this person is different, and they'll be right. You are. You just became someone else in the dark. Now let's talk about an invisible skill that silent builders master without realizing it: emotional independence. When you're building in isolation, no praise, no external rewards. You're forced to generate motivation from within. That's rare in today's world. Most people run on borrowed energy, a like, a comment, a you got this from a friend. And when those stop coming, they stop moving. But the silent builder doesn't need that. They've trained themselves to keep going without applause. They don't wake up and ask, who's watching me? They wake up and ask, how much closer can I get today? This doesn't mean they don't feel lonely. It means they've made peace with being unseen because they know it won't be forever. That's the difference between attention seekers and legacy creators. One needs people now. The other is building something people will respect forever. Jack Ma said, if you don't give up, you still have a chance. Giving up is the greatest failure. He worked in silence for years, mocked, rejected, underestimated. Now, he's a global icon. Not because he shouted, because he outlasted. That's the power of emotional independence. When no one is cheering, you keep marching. When nothing is trending, you keep improving. And when the world finally notices you, they'll assume you were born for it. But you'll know the truth. You just stayed longer in the silence than anyone else could handle. Here's a weird truth about long-term isolation. At some point, you stop caring about results and start falling in love with the rhythm, not the fame, not the goal, just the act of showing up. This is what musicians call groove. Writers call it flow. Athletes call it the zone. You lose track of time. You lose track of who's watching. You're just at present, alive. It's not sexy. No one claps when you practice alone for the 400th time. But here's the kicker. The world always rewards rhythm, because when the breakthrough moment arrives, and it always does, the one whose S in rhythm is ready to seize it. The overnight success isn't made on the night it happens. It's built in the mornings when no one's watching. Let's take Elon Musk. Before he launched Tesla and SpaceX, he was quietly learning about physics, rocket propulsion, battery chemistry, often obsessing alone while others partied. Not because he was preparing for headlines, because he genuinely loved the rhythm of solving impossible problems. That's what makes the silent builder different. They don't just chase success. They train their nervous system to live in the silence, to find joy in the practice. No praise needed, no audience required, just the rhythm, every single day. And while others burn out looking for shortcuts, the silent one glides forward. Quietly, steadily, dangerously consistent. Let's be honest. There's a phase in isolation where it gets ugly. You doubt everything. Your mission, your talent, your timing, even your sanity. You look around and see friends getting promotions, influencers going viral, startups raising millions, while you sit alone with a blinking cursor, a half-broken prototype, or an unreleased draft. It's tempting to quit. Tempting to say, maybe I was wrong. But here's where most people get it backwards. They think doubt is a sign to stop. In reality, doubt is a sign you're deep in the process. You're not confused because you're failing, you're confused because you're transforming. You're in the cocoon, and it's dark, gooey, and disorienting. What no one tells you is, the mind of a butterfly dissolves completely before it reforms. There's no partial upgrade, it's a full reset. Same with success. You can't partially become your next version. You must let the old one melt. Ego, expectations, false urgency, need for approval. Isolation forces that metamorphosis. You don't just build skills, you build a different identity. One that's not afraid of being overlooked, underestimated, or unknown. Because the real power isn't in being seen early, it's in becoming undeniable later. So if you're in that silent season of questioning, feeling like nothing's moving, Remember, confusion is a bridge, not a dead end. Cross it slowly, and don't rush the caterpillar. Here's something wild. Most people who changed the world weren't trying to go viral. They were just trying to solve a problem that wouldn't let them sleep. Steve Wozniak wasn't chasing headlines. He was building computers in his garage because it was fun. J.K. Rowling wasn't posting writing tips. She was scribbling on napkins during train rides, with no idea anyone would ever care. These weren't people following trends. They were people following pulls. That deep inner pull, to build something, fix something, express something. And that pull usually shows up in silence, not noise. We've confused momentum with metrics, but real momentum is internal, when the idea keeps haunting you, even when no one's watching. That's what makes isolation so powerful. It removes the noise so only the real signal remains. No likes, no comments, no audience. Perfect. It forces you to ask, would I still do this if no one clapped? Because that's the litmus test. If the answer is yes, even quietly, even with a whisper, then you're not just building a project, you're building purpose. And once purpose gains clarity, silence becomes strength. So let others chase applause. You chase the thing that keeps waking you up at 2 a.m. That's where silent success begins. There's a strange moment that happens on the silent path. You start off invisible. Then one day, without warning, the world notices. Suddenly, you're an overnight success. Funny, isn't it? No one saw the 5 a.m. writing sessions. No one saw the prototypes that failed. No one saw you doubting yourself in the dark, yet showing up anyway. They only see the result, the surface, the part that shines. But here's the truth. No one tells you. Silence compounds, just like interest in a bank. Every hour you put in when no one's watching. Every decision you made when it was just you and your values. Every moment you didn't quit, that was investment. And over time, that compound silence becomes unstoppable clarity. It's why the quiet ones often shock the world. Because while others were distracted, they were refining. While others were posting, they were perfecting. And by the time the world notices, it's already too late to catch up. Because you didn't just build a project. You built depth. You built self-trust. You built discipline under pressure. You don't rise just because of what you've made. You rise because of who you became in the shadows. And when the spotlight finally lands, you're not afraid of it. You're just ready. Now here's the part most people never expect on this journey. The closer you get to your breakthrough, the quieter it often becomes. Yes, you read that right. Just before the success hits, there's often a strange stillness. No recognition, no encouragement, no signs that it's working. You'll question everything. Why am I doing this? Is anyone even noticing? Maybe I should pivot or stop. This is the final test of silent success. Can you keep showing up when it feels like nothing is happening? Because ironically, that silence, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're almost through. Like the still air before a rocket breaks the sound barrier. Like the darkness before sunrise. This is where most people quit, right before the flip. But not you, because you understand something deeper. Success doesn't usually come with a knock on the door. It often sneaks in, sideways, quietly. A DM from someone you admire. A call that changes everything. A sudden flood of attention to something you created months ago. Breakthroughs rarely look like fireworks at first. They often arrive like a whisper. Keep going. You're close. Let's talk about recognition, or more accurately, the lack of it. When you're building in silence, you don't get applause. No likes, no comments, no pats on the back. People won't understand what you're doing until you've already done it. You'll hear things like, still working on that little project. So, do you make money from this yet? Maybe you should try something more stable. It's not their fault. They're not being evil. They're just operating from a different lens. Most people are wired to seek visible progress, tangible milestones, instant results. But silent success doesn't work like that. It's invisible, internal, quiet, like a seed growing underground. No one sees the roots taking hold until the plant breaks the soil. In fact, many of your biggest breakthroughs won't be public at all. You'll feel them in small private wins. A sentence you wrote that felt sharp, a system you finally optimized, a new level of clarity you hid in the dark. That's what separates the long game thinkers from the noise chasers. You're not building for claps. You're building because you can't not build. There's a storm in your bones, and silence isn't a punishment. It's a sacred space. Let them sleep on you. Let them misunderstand your pace. Because soon, they won't ask what you're doing anymore. They'll ask how you did it. At some point, your silence becomes a strategy, not a defense mechanism, not shyness, not insecurity, a choice. You start realizing the louder the world gets, the more power there is in staying quiet. Because in silence, you learn how to hear your own signal, not just the noise of others. You're no longer obsessed with proving, posting, or persuading. You're obsessed with improving. You'd rather sharpen your craft in private than perform it for empty attention. And that's rare, because most people aren't addicted to results. They're addicted to recognition. They crave being seen working, not actually working, but you're different. You're okay letting the algorithm ignore you. You're okay being the ghost in the group chat. You're okay choosing sleep over status. Why? Because you're not chasing a quick pop. You're building a slow rise. There is something spiritual about working in silence. especially in an era that rewards oversharing and speed. It becomes a kind of rebellion. Where others crave virality, you crave velocity, quiet, consistent, undeniable forward motion. Where others fear obscurity, you trust the invisible momentum you've built behind the scenes. This is the moment your journey shifts. You're not seeking escape anymore, you're embracing evolution. And you understand, silence isn't a void, it's a forge. There comes a moment, not announced, not celebrated, when the world finally notices what you've been building. No fireworks, no viral moment, just a quiet ripple that turns into a wave. A client comes in, a deal closes. A post you almost didn't publish reaches the right person, and suddenly, the silence you lived in becomes your strength. The foundation you built becomes your launch pad. But here's the twist most people don't understand. The breakthrough isn't the moment you win, it's the moment you don't stop. Because that's the real success. Staying consistent long after motivation dies. And guess what? The people who once laughed, they won't remember. The people who doubted, they'll pretend they always believed in you. And the people who truly saw you from the beginning, they won't say much, because they knew this day was coming. You'll look back at all those nights, when you almost gave up, when no one clapped, when you worked in silence while others got the spotlight, and you'll smile, because now you know. You never needed noise, you needed time, and you used it well. You built something real. You became someone rare, and that, not followers, not fame, not fortune, is what makes your story unforgettable.